The afternoon sun slanted through the palace courtyard, painting the marble floor in gold. Lady Satyabhama sat quietly beside Lord Krishna, her eyes thoughtful, her heart still echoing with the stories he had shared earlier. Krishna's voice had been calm, yet deep, like a river carrying both stillness and power. She had heard of compassion, of the way kindness could bless those who practiced it. But now, she felt another question rising inside her, one that had troubled her for years. She turned to him and spoke softly, yet with urgency. "Lord, you have told me of mercy and the reward of a gentle heart. But I have seen another truth in this world, one that troubles me. Why is it that some people who live with cruelty seem to enjoy every comfort, while those who live honestly and kindly often drown in hardship? Does the world reward deceit and punish virtue?" Krishna looked at her for a long moment, a faint smile playing on his lips, not in mockery, but in understanding. "Satyabhama," he said gently, "what you see is only one part of the whole. Life is not just what meets the eye. It is a thread in a vast weaving, stretching across lifetimes. Sometimes, to understand a single knot, you must see the entire fabric. Let me tell you a story." He leaned back, and his voice deepened, drawing her into the tale. In a distant kingdom, there lived a general feared by all. He was ruthless in battle, merciless in judgment, and blind to the suffering of those beneath him. Villagers trembled at his approach, and his soldiers obeyed without question, not from loyalty, but from fear. This general was a master of cruelty. He taxed the poor beyond their means, took what he wanted without gratitude, and never offered a word of comfort to the grieving. Yet, his life seemed blessed. His home was grand, his table always heavy with food, and his influence unmatched. The people whispered, "Is this the justice of the heavens? That such a man should prosper while others starve?" But the general's life took an unexpected turn. One evening, he was returning from a victorious campaign when his horse stumbled near a roadside shrine. He fell heavily and struck his head. When he awoke, he found himself staring at the face of an old monk who had been tending to travelers on that road. The monk offered him water, tended his wounds, and spoke with such gentleness that the general felt something unfamiliar stir within him. In that quiet night, under the glow of oil lamps, the monk spoke of a truth the general had never considered, that every action plants a seed, and those seeds, whether of kindness or cruelty, will one day bear fruit. For reasons he could not explain, the words stayed with him. In the days that followed, he found himself unable to command executions without hesitation. He began sparing lives, forgiving debts, and listening, really listening, to the voices of the poor. Slowly, the shadow around him began to lift. Krishna paused here, watching Satyabhama's face. "You see, Devi," he said, "we often judge a man by the chapter of his life we happen to witness. But a story does not reveal its truth until the final page. Sometimes the cruel are living on the harvest of past kindness, just as the good may be enduring the debts of old wrongs. The wheel of life turns for all. It never forgets." Satyabhama lowered her gaze, the edges of her question softening. Yet, in her heart, she knew she wished to hear the rest of the story, the part where the wheel turned in full. Krishna's gaze seemed to drift far away, as though his mind was following the general's journey through time. After the night with the old monk, he continued, the general could not return fully to his old ways. At first, his changes were small, granting mercy to a soldier who had failed in duty, releasing a farmer from an impossible tax, giving food to a widow without demanding repayment. But even small drops can swell a river. Soon, the people began to speak of his kindness with the same intensity they once spoke of his cruelty. Still, the past has a long shadow. Enemies he had made in his ruthless years had not forgotten him. One day, As he traveled to a distant village to settle a dispute, an arrow flew from the forest and struck him deep. His guards rushed him back to the capital, but the wound was grave. The palace physicians worked tirelessly, but the general knew his time was short. In those quiet, fevered nights, he thought often of the monk's words, "Every seed will one day bear fruit." He realized now that he was tasting the last bitter fruit of his past cruelty. But he also felt something else, peace. He had changed. The man lying in that bed was not the same as the one who once took pride in fear and blood. Whatever came next, he felt ready to meet it. When death finally came, the general did not find himself in a place of punishment. Instead, he stood before Chitragupta, the scribe of the underworld, who read from the great book of deeds. "Your past life," Chitragupta said, "was filled with acts of cruelty, but in your final years you turned toward compassion. That choice has changed the course of your journey. You will not be cast into darkness. Instead, you shall be born again, not into wealth or power, but into a humble life, where kindness will be both your test and your reward. If you hold to it, you will never fall as you once did." The general bowed his head. For the first time in many lifetimes, he felt truly grateful. Krishna's voice softened as he looked at Satyabhama. "You see, Devi, we often look at the present moment and think it is the whole truth. But the law of karma does not follow the timing we expect. A man may live richly today because of good seeds planted long ago, even if now he sows thorns. Another may suffer despite his present kindness because he is still clearing the weeds from an old field." Satyabhama frowned slightly. "But is that not unfair, my lord? To suffer now for the mistakes of another lifetime?" Krishna smiled gently. "It is no more unfair than reaping mangoes today from trees planted years ago. We are not separate from who we have been. Every life is but a chapter in a longer story. The soul carries both debts and blessings forward until the account is balanced. What matters is not how the page begins, but how it ends, and what seeds you plant for the chapters to come." The queen's gaze fell to her hands. She thought of people she knew, those who had faced relentless hardship despite their goodness. She thought of others who seemed to flourish despite their selfishness. Perhaps, she realized, she had only been seeing a single frame of a much greater tapestry. Krishna rose, the late sun casting a halo of gold around him. "Devi," he said, "do not be troubled by the fortunes of others. What is sown will be reaped, but each must tend his own field. Sow kindness, even in rocky soil, and one day, whether in this life or the next, you will walk in its shade." Satyabhama bowed her head. The question in her heart finally quieted. She understood now. Justice was not absent. It was simply patient. Krishna's final words lingered in the air like the fading notes of a flute. "The river of life does not flow in straight lines, Devi. It curves through valleys of joy and mountains of pain, carrying with it the waters of many rains from many seasons. Do not mistake one bend in the river for its end." He paused, letting the silence speak. "When you see a cruel man prosper, know that he is living on the harvest of past kindness, and that his present cruelty is planting a different crop. When you see a good soul suffer, know that they are clearing the thorns from old fields, making space for a future where flowers will grow. No seed, good or bad, is ever lost." Satyabhama understood. Justice was not blind, it was timeless. Moral: life remembers everything. What you plant will find you, whether in the sunlight of this life or the quiet dawn of another.